welcome back to the Arena podcast. I'm super excited today to be joined by John Quinn. Quinny, thank you so much for jumping on and taking your time.
No, hey, look, it's good to be on, mate. It's always good to have a chat about some of these things. So yeah.
Yeah, so basically what I do when I start off these podcasts, I ask people to tell what their story is. But with you, I'm just going to ask a bit of a different question. It's actually, so what do you do and why do you do it?
That's a good question. What do? I'm still trying to work that out. Look, I'll probably start with the why. I mean, I've always worked with people. Ever since I was young, I always wanted to work with people. I suppose supporting, helping, and initially that was working with young people sort of through childhood and family, through probation, through different institutions. I kind of studied around social work and really enjoyed that space of working with young people. And then from there, I've always played sports. So when I went back to university and did my Masters in counselling, I kind of had a bit of I suppose, sports psychology, mental skills focus. So it kind of flowed into then doing what I do now, which is working, I suppose, with people around performance, and that's from young people to kids at school to athletes at the top level. Working how do we perform consistently? It always fascinates me. Of why the great and why the good when they've probably got some of the skill sets and physical attributes. It's always fascinated me, and ever since I was a young kid, I was sport mad. So I always wanted to kind of try and understand, and not that I probably do now, but I'm probably getting closer to it, is how do you sustain excellence, whether it's as a team or as an individual. So most of my time now is working in that space and trying to understand what allows that to happen. And that's from a 14-year-old kid at school who loves playing football to I had a 58-year-old powerlifter who was kind of the senior one. I just love working with people who want to get better. It's a pretty cool role to have, and with that, it goes across business, sport, and life basically. So, yeah, why I do it? Because you get to meet really cool people. You get to get inspired by listening to their stories of how they persevere, that resilience piece. A bit of a buzzword, and what allows someone to keep going when everyone else stops around it. So I've always been interested in understanding that, and I suppose I'm getting closer to it at times, but as you get closer to things, they seem to shift because you meet someone else that does it a different way, around it. So I suppose that's what I do. I work with people looking to perform, I suppose, is the best way to generalise it.
Yeah, it's working, and then so working in the mental skills side, when you work with so many different, I guess, age groups, men, women, high performance kids. What's the real difference that you see in terms of say from a kid example, just enjoying the game, and then when it gets like a high performance level, is there a real difference that you see as well?
Look, yes, no. I think the big difference from a teenager to an athlete who's matured is this bit of maturity. So, we see the world differently when we're 14, 15. 16, 17, 18, 19, we don't really understand what the world's about, and we're probably still nice and pure and innocent, to be fair, and that's probably not a bad place to be. And I suppose that's the balance, is how do you, when you move into the high performance environment or professional environment, how do you kind of still hold on to those things that were dear to you as a kid? Because that's the stuff that's important, because often when we get into that high performance environment, almost the fun can get sucked out of it, which is a real shame at times, and it shouldn't be. I mean, sport is still a game. It should be enjoyable, but I think at times, and it's another whole discussion with youth sports, it can get taken away from us. And I think my experience as the best coaches I've been around, really emphasise that enjoyment part. But enjoyment can be lots of different things. Enjoyment can be pushing yourself in the gym, to doing a yo-yo, to doing a bronco, to really pushing yourself, to just having fun with your mates. It can be lots of different kind of enjoyments around it, but I think that fun factor becomes really important. So I think probably the difference is probably time commitment. As a youngster, I'm hoping you're having fun as a kid and doing kid shit and living a life, and as you get older, then it becomes more of your life, and you could probably commit a bit more time to it, and it becomes, I hope not serious, but I hope it just comes a bit more focused. Where you're a bit more clear on what you need to do. You probably put a higher price on your simple habits. When you're 15, 16, you don't really care about sleep and doing some of the basics or recovery. You just go and do stuff, basically. But as you get into that high performance, I suppose, slash professional environment, some of those things become a little bit more important. Not serious, but just a bit more important. To, getting a good night's sleep and doing your recovery is actually just as important as your training. So I think that's the difference. As you get older, the detail becomes even more important. You probably specialise a little bit more. Obviously, when you get to 18, 19, 20, 21, you're probably just doing one sport potentially, but I'm hoping as a 14, 15-year-old, you're doing as many sports as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the good things about New Zealand, especially, and I mean, being in the world of football, I think there's a lot of pressure where you have to get so specific so early, because you see 16-year-olds making their professional debut, all of a sudden there's pressure on you as a kid. You're like, okay, how do I? And then the comparison thing comes in, right? And that's something I'm struggling with at the moment. I genuinely am, because I've got to a point where I'm 25 and yeah, maybe I haven't made it to the level that I'm actually at right now. So how do I, basically it's one of the things I'm trying to work through, is how do I just stick to what I'm trying to do, stick to my own and understand my own journey rather than comparing it to other people.
Look, it's a really good question, and I'd have to say here's the one thing and do it, but I think there's an aspect and layers to this, and one is the ability to step back and understand everyone's journey is different. I mean, the thing about making it a professional sport, there's a timing and luck aspect to it, and that's the bit we don't really talk about that sometimes. If you're a first five in Canterbury the last 10 years, you probably haven't had much of a chance because you had Dan Carter and Richie Morongo in front of you. Doesn't mean you're not good enough. It's just those guys in front of you are just better at the moment. So sometimes it can be a bit of a timing thing. If you're a 7 in Canterbury for a wee while with Richie, you're in trouble too. So, and it's the same in any of the sports. And sometimes, you can be right time, right place. There's an injury, you get an opportunity, then away you go. And that's the hardest thing, where most jobs, if I do this, this, and this, and get these qualifications, generally I know then I'll become a lawyer, I'll become an accountant, I'll become a manager of the whatever I'm doing. But in sport, you can do this, this, and this, and then not get that. So that's the real challenging part, because it's that uncertainty. And often, when I'm talking to athletes around the uncertain pieces, if you want certainty, get a 9-to-5 job, because that will give you certainty. Even though it won't, because life's still uncertain. Sport doesn't give you that. And then the other, I suppose, the flip side is, how do you see other people succeed and as being an inspiration compared to a threat? Because often we see other people succeed and we kind of go, oh shit, why they got it, and we feel a bit bad because I should be there, and we get caught up in that kind of that language, where if you look at it going, what they've made it, that's another pathway. It means I can around it. So then if I can see that as a bit of a threat, or actually can go, that's a really good challenge for me now. Because I've now got to challenge myself to manage that, but also got to go, well, if I just bring my attention back onto me again and what I'm doing, that's all I can do. And I know it's a very cliche thing to say, but we tend to feel better when we have a sense of control. So there's so much you can't control in your career. There's so much I can't control in my career. Similar, I'll get contracts, or I don't get contracts, and I can't control it. All I can try and do is give myself the best opportunity to be ready for contracts or ready for work by, training hard, studying hard, learning, getting better at my craft, is something you have to do. But this is the hardest bit, is then really understand, well, what is success? Is success making it making it whatever that means as a pro footballer, or success doing those little things really, really well? Because unfortunately we get caught up in the outcome success. I've made it when I do that. Well, I suppose it's something I learned a long time ago. I've been lucky to work with some really amazing teams and individuals, but it doesn't mean I've made it. Sometimes there's a massive luck aspect to my career, where it was right time, right place around it. So I've really been lucky, and probably working with your mum and the tactics years ago taught me a great deal, because we lost a lot, but it gave me a sense of understanding what my self-worth was, compared to getting caught up in my self-worth was if we won, because we weren't winning. So it really taught me around, well, what is success for me as an individual? My role is mental skills. What can I control? Let's look to do a really good job with that. And times I did, don't get me wrong, at times I probably didn't either. So it's the same for you. It's going, well, this is what I want. I know I want that. We all want to win. This isn't the PC world where everyone's a fucking winner. That's bullshit. We want to win. But then what does winning look like that I can control? because it's no different me working with a team or an athlete. I can't control whether they go out and do stuff or whether they win. What I can control is my influence over them through my preparation, what I'm delivering them. So it's the same for you. It's okay. Well, while I'm waiting for this opportunity, what can I do to give my best chance? And this is the hardest part, because when you're really in, it's easy or easier. When you're way out, it's easy. When you're in the middle, it's tough because you're just waiting. So let's not, it's the old quote, don't count the days, make the days count. So what does that look like for you from a football sense, but also what does it look like for you from a human sense? What are you doing for yourself to buffer from that uncertainty? There's other interests, like you got this podcast, cool, that's something else to look forward to, that's something else to fill your cup with. Because if you wait for football to fill your cup, yeah, it's a tough gig, eh?
Yeah. This the patient side of things is so tough. But I actually shared that quote that make the days count instead of counting days in one of the episodes, because I heard that from you last time we had a chat. So I wanted to share that with people. But what I've basically done from there on, I took that and I went through a process where I started like actually breaking down my days. So I realized that I've actually got natural breaks in my days. So like at 11 a.m. I go pick up my lunch and then I have that break, and then I've got another time slot in between going to training. So then I'm like, okay, so now I've got these windows where what can I achieve? And it's just those little things that you said, right? How do I fill my cup up, or how do I get that little bit better? So in the morning, it could be like just focusing on eating healthy and having a good breakfast, and then simple things like that, or doing a little bit of mobility. Then it could just be something like reading or doing research for the podcast. So that's something that actually really helped me to break it down. So I do appreciate that. Going back to the point we were talking about, like that patient side of things, one thing, especially in my career now, and that I've found talking to a whole bunch of semi-professional athletes in an environment where you haven't quite made it to where you want, but you've still got the goals, the aspirations, yet there's the pressure on you. It comes down to finances and money, and that's something that I find is just a massive stress, because obviously you want to be supporting yourself. You think about the future a lot. Do you talk to athletes about that as well? And like for me, there's like, at what point do you have to think about the future and set yourself up rather than keep pursuing this dream?
Great question. You're asking some doozies here. Look, I think High Performance Sport did a survey recently. I think financial stress was one of the biggest stresses for our New Zealand athletes. Around it, I'm lucky. I work with New Zealand Bowls. I've worked with them for about nearly 14 years and really love it because it's your grassroots stuff. They would lose money to represent their country. They've got to take holidays. They get bugger all when they're away. Literally, we've got world champs this year. One of the athletes, that they work at a school. The school said, "Look, we can't give you any more unpaid leave." So she's actually had to resign from her job to go to this world champs. And that's the bit which is really hard, because we see the All Blacks getting paid and the Black Caps getting paid, but we've got to understand that's a real small minority in New Zealand sport, particularly they get paid. They get paid well. Yes, super players get paid well, but in the context of their career, it's not that great. It's good money when you're 20, but it's not when you're 25 or 30 and you're on these short contracts. So I suppose for me, it's getting clarity, and this is where goals become important, and almost going, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it 2 years, and this is where I want to be within 2 years. And then if I'm not there, then I'm going to review where I'm up to. Now, in that 2 year time, if you want to, I'm just making up, you want to be a professional footballer or sign these certain deals, then you give yourself a chance to do it. Then after that 2 years or year, whatever it is you decide on, that date's a review date. And then you sit there and go, well, actually, I'm really close to where I want to be, so I'm going to hang in there, or actually, I'm no further forward. And then it is working out, well, what else do I want with my life? Because some people do want security, financial security, career security, where some people actually go, I'm happy to roll the dice. I mean, there's an athlete I'm working at the moment, and they've left their country of birth to come over here at 29 to try and crack it, because they think they haven't had an opportunity where they've come from, so they come over to New Zealand and at 29 do it. Now, I don't know their financial situation, what they can or can't do it, but that's what they've decided on. So, I can't say to you or anyone else, right, you've got to do it at 27, you flag it. Some people at 22 flag it. Some people at 35 flag it. Some people never flag it, mate. They just keep on pushing. So it's a big question, because I don't think there's an answer to it. But I think for me, whether you've got a career and you're doing it or not, you still should have little goals and review points along the way. Am I where I want to be? Because and most people in their lives, they don't do this. They do university, get a trade, and then they get their trade and get the university qualification, and they hope that job fills them for the next 50 years. They don't think, I'm going to do that for 5 years and review it. They just keep doing it, and then they create a lifestyle, and then they have a mortgage next, and they go, oh shit, well, I can't change my career now because that actually pays for my mortgage and my lifestyle. And then they get stuck in these jobs they probably don't really like. They thought at 20 it'd be cool, but at 45 it sucks shit. But then they're stuck in it. So for me, how do we get better at setting goals and being okay with those goals? But also remember, goals aren't pass fail. It's just a review point of, this is where I want to be at this time. I'm either really close to that, I'm actually a little way away from that. Both will give you a good chance to reflect on, okay, well, how come I'm closer to it and how come I'm not closer to it? And then it's about decision time around it. Because I think with goals, we get caught up in pass fail. And, if I persevere with this for 5 years and I don't make it, what does that mean? Nothing. No one cares. That's the thing about it. We worry about, what's everyone going to think if I've travelled the world to get my career and I don't get it? What's everyone going to think? No one's going to think anything. They've got their own shit they're worried about. Own shit they're doing. They just want to make sure they love you and you're happy. That's all they worry about. But we get caught up in, and you hear this with students at university. They do 2 years university, then they realise they don't like the course. They go, I've just wasted 2 years. And I said, no, you haven't. You've learnt things in 2 years, and you also learnt you don't want to do that. That's a great learning, around it. But we get caught up in, if I want to commit to this, I want the bit at the end. But we don't always achieve our goals. So I probably haven't really answered your question, because you wanted a time frame, but there's not a time frame to this. It is around, for you or any athlete, going, well, this is where I am at the moment. I'm 25. Okay, so at 27 or 26, I want to be here. Okay, well, let's put where you want to be, and then make a plan to work backwards from that date. And then when you get to that date, review where I'm up to. Okay, yeah, I'm really close, just about there. Cool, keep going. Or shivers, I don't think I've moved too much. The things I thought would happen haven't happened, even though I've done all this stuff. Right, do I roll it around again? Yeah, I might just do a year this time. Cool. Just go for a year.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is, I don't actually think that there is an answer to that question. So it's kind of just, I'm just throwing, absolute doozies at you. But
I think there is, but it's an individual one, and it would change over time with lots of different factors to it, around it. Because say, for example, you go, I'm going to give it 2 more years, and I'm really going to persevere and do what you're doing great, and then you're doing these podcasts. Next minute, these podcasts take off, mate, and it's humming. You might actually go a year into it. I'm actually really enjoying this. I actually might really look at my goal and actually shift direction, and actually go down this podcast. I don't know what you guys, what it's called, but that's become a new passion. That's the thing about it, is that we can change, around it. And I remember the stat years ago, they said that your generation will potentially have 7 different careers in their lives, not 7 different jobs, 7 different careers. When you think about some of your teachers at school, that was their only school they taught at, and they're at 60 now, and they're still there. They had one job for their whole life. This generation won't do that. So that's the beauty of life. It's that you think, this is where I'm going. I look at my career, I thought where I started, there's no way I ever thought I'd be sitting where I am now. It was never a goal. It wasn't even a thought, around it. But it just meandered in through luck, through really good mentors around me, people who challenged me, people said, have you thought about this? And the next minute, I started there, and I've gone all the way off there. And it's the same for you. You're clear where you want to go now. But through doing this and doing other things, it could open doors that you didn't even think were even there. That will help. That would impact your decision.
I think one of the themes by having these conversations is coming down to identity, and it's so important and crucial in people's lives. But the conversation and the question that I've been asking is that idea of actually separating like these different eggs into different baskets, and how important is that? And in the world of elite sport, and you see kids trying to progress through these ranks all the way up to the high performance level, how important is it to actually understand that you're not just in this one area of your life, and there's so many different aspects that you actually have?
Oh, incredibly. It's a really good question. I was actually talking to someone the other day about it. At what stage do we start sowing the seed around this? Because you talk to a 14, 15-year-old about identity and values and strengths, they probably roll their eyes at you and go, what are you talking about? Around it. Someone's asked a 20-year-old that, they're going to struggle. So look, it's a really, really good question, and it's one of how do we educate parents to understand this space, educate schools to understand this space, because schools make kids commodities now. They're assets. So they're rowers, they're not humans, they're not students, they're academics, they're musicians. How do we educate parents around, your child's not the footballer, your child's your son or your daughter, around it, because that really ties into it. And the biggest problem you've got in the space now is your branding piece with social media. And there's money to be made if you do identify as, I'm the footballer who does this, or I'm the cricketer. So I think it's getting harder at times, but I think this is a bit around, good coaches will all really push around, we're people first, almost that human being versus the human doing. And within high performance sport in New Zealand, in the last few years, there's been some real challenges because their focus has been the human doing and medals and winning, and they've worked out through many reasons and reviews that that's not sustainable. So some of the practices around coaching that was done 10, 15, 20 years ago certainly won't survive in today's climate. So being able to have mentors around you who can challenge you and ask you about that identity piece and who are you beyond just football, beyond your sport, and remind yourself of that. And it's like with you now, is that you're a son, you're a brother, you're a mate, you're a grandson, you've got these other roles that you have, and how do you hold on to those? So your fulfillment isn't just tied into how far you can kick a football. You're doing podcasts now, so it's the ability to get your language right around that. You hear it often, probably when your mates were younger, you introduce, here's Ben the footballer. No, it's just Ben. Around it, when you hear that enough, then you kind of believe that. Oh, well, I'm a footballer, so when I play good football, I'm good. When I play bad football, I'm bad. And I'm really simplifying it, but that's, I think, we can get caught up in that. So the identity piece, I'm going all over the place, is incredibly important, but it's also a really tough place to chip away at with some people, because it's a concept that, if I said this to you at 18, you'd laugh at me. Even probably 20 at times, and I think it's one that it takes a while to chip away at. And I'm really lucky. I've had a couple of athletes, long-term athletes, for a number of years, and I think some of them at 28, 29 really started getting it. I still think in New Zealand it's 22, 24 where the penny starts dropping. But in between that, how much work do we do to chip away and plant seeds at young athletes? And again, I think we are doing that, but it's a long game around this identity piece, because it's so important, because it gives you that sense of belonging and who you are.
Going off the back of that, one of the massive things that is a fear for being overseas and pursuing something in terms of sport is the fear of going back home, or potentially dropping down to a level that you think is almost like a failure. And we've talked about it before, but it's one of those fears that I think a lot of people and athletes have, is that judgment of other people, where if I was to go back home for other reasons in terms of fulfilling my values, like being close to family, being close to friends, but then having that external judgment, like, he pursued it overseas but he didn't make it. That's a scary thing, and I think it's not just other people, but it's also family too. Have you had a lot of athletes deal with that as well?
Yeah, look, I think the fear of failure in general and judgment. I mean, there's three things, my experience, we all fear. We fear failure, we fear judgment, and we fear fitting in around those things. But when you actually unpack a lot of it, I mean, as we've talked about, failure is part of growing. In this situation, going home is not failure. You're going out to explore something. You're a venturer. So you're going out to explore, try things. Because the easy option for most of us, and probably the people who will potentially have a comment on it, well, they're at home doing nothing. So why are we going to listen to people at home who haven't even tried some of this? And for me, if we don't try things, that's more damaging to me compared to when I don't try something. Even though when I try, it's hard and it's uncomfortable and we worry about it. But for me, it's the ability to go, as you know, your family always love you. There's always going to be people who judge, it's your kind of talk back radio people, and especially with keyboard warriors now. But the reality is the people who love you just want you home and to be happy, or to be happy wherever you are around it. So some of it's understand what failure looks like. For me, failure is giving up and not trying something. That's failure because you've made a choice. Resilience is knowing when to persevere, but also when to go, actually, what's best for me right now is to be close to family around it, because that's the reality is that's the most important thing for all of us, family and friends, around it. So it's acknowledging, it is a little bit scary. It's acknowledging, I'm probably a little bit worried that what will people think, but the people who you care about actually won't care, around it. So it's almost that acceptance of, I know this is what it could feel like, but we can actually still do it anyway. And remember, the thing about fear is not real danger. Fear is just in our mind. We're imagining what people will think. Most people are so caught up in their own world, they won't think much about it at all. And the reality is, if you choose to come home, you're coming home for really good reasons. So the people are going to criticise that. Well, are they the most important people in your life? I remember a coach years ago, we were talking about similar stuff in the sense of, reporters and the media criticising players, and his response was, most of those reporters never played the game. The ones who have played the game have not played it to a high level. So why would you listen to someone you don't really know, you don't really respect, don't really understand the game? Why listen to it? Well, it makes sense not to, but sometimes it's hard not to. It's almost a bit with that social media part. So I'm kind of, again, going around in circles a wee bit, but it's acknowledging, there is a bit of fear and worry, but that's fine. What's best for you? And it goes back to what's aligned with my values, and we make those decisions. Will it feel uncomfortable? Yeah, potentially, but we can't fear uncomfortableness. We can't live in our life in that real comfort zone and that avoidance zone. So sometimes it's being okay with, this is what I'm doing, and then it's your narrative. When people say, "Hey, how come you came home? It's been really clear. Yeah, well, it wasn't really working where I was, and I really want to be beside family." So you can control that narrative. Compared to, it didn't work over there and I wasn't playing very well, and almost we get into that little victim road. It's actually, no, it wasn't suiting me for at the moment, but I'm going to come home for a year and then I might kick off again and go again. Because, mate, it's so inspiring to watch people look to aspire their dreams. How many people who sit back home, they're doing nothing. They're going to work 9 to 5 jobs. You've got 50 years of that. What's the hurry? And a lot of people who
that's
criticise
the comparison thing.
It is, but a lot of people who criticise you haven't got the balls to do it themselves. That's what I'm saying. Leadership is actually going somewhere. It's leading. It's not fellowship. And what goes with leadership is people going, "Well, why'd you do that?" Because I can, and because I wanted to. But we don't all achieve our goals. That's the thing about goals is goals aren't pass fail. But what you want to be doing is when you do hang up your boots. Did I put the best version of myself out 8 times out of 10? Yeah, I did. Did I persevere? Yeah, I did. Did I give myself the best opportunity? Yeah, I did. Now, what that gives you, who knows? But that no regrets becomes the important part to it, around it. But what underpins all of this stuff is actually who you are as a person and how you feel and your well-being piece. You get that right, things will launch. So let's not be scared of being scared for a start.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I think that's it comes down. I mean, that's why I just decided to call this podcast In the Arena, and it comes back to that the quote from Theodore Roosevelt. It's like, it's not the critic who counts, and it comes down to the man in the arena, the person who's just in that pursuit, right? And one person I've been listening to a bit recently is Tim Grover, who was Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan's personal trainer. And he talks about this, like the pursuit of anything, right? And it's like the fact of sport is that you're not guaranteed shit. Like you can work harder than the next person. You can, as you said earlier, like it comes down to luck a lot of the time. And especially in sport where it comes down to the opinions of coaches, of scouts, of other people. And it could just be that one game that you play, right? But the reality is that I'd rather spend my time in pursuit of something great and not have any outcomes, and knowing that I am chasing something worth it instead of, settling for, I'm pretty comfortable here. I'm in my safe space, and I think that's what it comes down to. But one thing that you talked about a lot in your line of work is like the mindfulness piece and actually being present in that time, especially when the emotion can get overwhelming. How do you train not just elite athletes at the highest level to stay in that moment, but for anyone going through that process?
Yeah, look, the problem we have in our society, I'm always criticising society, we don't, we're told to focus and we're told to concentrate, but no one told us how to, you know? So for me, it's how do we actually practice being more present simply by putting your phone down. There's a real good starting point. And most of us will go, yeah, I'll do that, but we don't. You look at most, I don't know what the average screen time is a day, but it'd be bloody high for most people. I think we touch our phone an average 2,500 times a day around it. So we've got this reliance on technology, and so we don't have to be present because we have things that take us away. So part of being mindful, I love it as a tool because it can just be so practical. It can be so, when I say easy, it's hard to get good at, but you can just do it in so many simple ways, from waking up in the morning and just having a breath and just be mindful of the breath and just do a simple body scan, check in. We don't do that. We just get up, we go, oh, gosh, I'm tired, and we pull ourselves out of bed and I can mope around the house and then go and do something. Well, let's just stop, pause, mindful, brush your teeth, actually just taste the toothpaste, feel the toothbrush, mindful coffee, mindful chocolate eating, mindful walk. So it's about practicing. The reason athletes are fit and strong because there's repetition. They don't go to the gym for 4 hours and then don't go again. They go to the gym probably 4 times a week and they do certain exercises and there's a repetition with those exercises. And that's what makes us strong. It's the same with our mind work, is how do we actually practice focusing? Because most people go, well, how important is focus and performing? Yeah, it's really important. And concentration, yeah, it's really important. Cool. How often do you practice that? And most people go, shit, I don't know. Well, reading a book, great focus exercise. You actually got to focus to do that. Practice really listening to people. We don't listen, Practice, between sets. Bring your attention into you. Practice feeling the bar, So it's just doing practical things on a consistent basis, which allows us to bring that focus back in. Going for a coffee and just sitting and just for 5 minutes and just noticing your thoughts, allowing the brain to go. Practice bringing it in. If you're a student, that's why we say to young athletes, you get 6 opportunities a day to practice focusing in class. Most of them don't take that challenge on. They go to class and disengage like we all did, let the mind wander off. So there's mindfulness exercise you can do, there's apps you can do, but it's just basic things, around practicing to focus. Because what underpins all that with mindfulness is that non-judgmental part, which I think is the most important part. We all get being present, on purpose in a particular way. We all get that, we do it. But what allows us to stay in that area is the judgmental part. Because often we get into judgment, good, bad, once we get into that, we start slippery slope because we generally hold on to the bad. So our ability to not judge, not judge that kick, not judge that training, just it is what it is. I'll assess and reflect on it, but I'm not going to judge from that negative bias we get to. So to answer your question again long-windedly, is there's little things we can do during the day to practice focusing. We generally choose not to because we don't like being bored.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that part when you're talking about analysing sport in terms of you actually reflecting, it's one thing that I think as you get, well, that's a good question. Do you find that as athletes get higher in the high performance and when there's certain amounts of pressure and judgment because you're on TV, you got cameras, you got fans, and there's more, I guess, it's your lifestyle, there's money involved and things like that. Do those mistakes, do high performance athletes tend to focus on those more because of that reason? And like, say I might have had a great game, but I made 3 passes where one of them gave the other team an opportunity to score, and that's on my brain because I'm like, okay, that's actually quite a big mistake. Do you find that more?
No, I think the better ones are aware of that, but they focus on what they've done well first. So often we would talk around, what was your goal for the game or the training? And then there's 2 questions post that. What went well? Start with what went well. Because otherwise because generally we go, what went well, then what didn't go well. So let's just start with what went well in conjunction with your goals. So my goal today was to have, I'm just making it up, good accuracy with my passing, or making sure I'm looking up before I pass. Things you can control. And let's look for opportunities when I did that. And when I did do it, how come I did it? What was behind that? What allowed me to do it? Perfect. And the next question is, okay, what did I learn from that? What I learned today is when I give myself a bit more time on the ball, so I'm just making this up, using my breath a bit more, my head's up a bit more so I can scan better, it allows me then to actually be more accurate with my passing. Great, let's just do more of that. Because too often we get into, and coaches will do this, what went well, team, yeah, cool. Right, what didn't go well? And so what do we hold on to? What didn't go well? Well, we can't build self-belief or confidence, what we're going to call it, if we focus on what we can't do. So our ability to, and this is where I think high performers are really good at this. Yes, they're competitive as anyone. They want it badly, but they know if they focus on this stuff here, ain't going to move forward. If they focus on what they're doing well and do more of that, they've got more chance of building some confidence, which allows, again, it's easier to focus when we're confident. So I think they're better at it. They're still aware of areas if they've made a mistake, they're aware of that. But if you look at it rationally, why would you focus on something that's already happened, what you can't change? Makes no sense, does it? But we do.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And it's almost, we have this thing of, if you make a mistake and show that you're angry, that shows that you care. No, it just shows you're angry. It also probably shows that you've lost focus, you're not in the moment, and you're a bit of a waste of time for us for the next 5 minutes. So the best performers, from my experience, make mistakes, but you don't notice it. You watch their body language, you watch what they do next. They don't try any harder because they're always trying hard. They just carry on. And that, for me, that's what separates them, because they know it's going to happen. They make just as many mistakes, but they manage it quicker. So by managing it quicker, then you're not then more chance of making the second mistake or the third mistake. So for me, it's almost that acceptance of you're going to make a mistake. Let's accept that now. So when we go out for the game, let's not set ourselves up, I can't make mistakes, I won't make a mistake. You're going to make a mistake. So let's enjoy that process now. Let's accept it. And when it happens, what do I do to bounce forward from it?
That kind of leads on to something else I'm really trying to focus on at the moment, which is leadership. And being in a captaincy role at the moment, I find it awfully tough between setting my own personal standards and having myself reach those, but then separating that into understanding it's completely different from what other people will have in their own standards, but then trying to keep a team standard at the same time. I find it such a difficult balance, because I want to set the highest expectations for myself and hold myself to that, so my performance is therefore good, but then trying to realistically balance that around a team where I know that other individuals have their own, but as a collective, how do you talk to athletes and leaders about that?
It's really hard. Teams in different countries with rugby, and there's a good variety of skill sets. Yeah, and a couple of them, you got these world class players to basically club players, around it, and so it's a challenge, because you play in an English Premier team, probably everyone's around skill sets pretty similar, so everyone's on the same page, and as you go further and further down the league, you find that skill set can get bigger and bigger. It's to me a very cliche answer, I'm afraid, but cliches are good because they work, is that you control what you can control, and you're clear on that. And then you look to influence the things you can't control. And so how do you influence some of those players one by one around being curious, building really strong relationships, supporting them? I mean, there's a great, if you like reading Phil Jackson's book, his first book before 11 Rings was, it's gone over my head now, Sacred Hoops. And he talks in there about when Jordan was kind of playing some really good basketball, he was going to Phil Jackson, he goes, look, mate, you've got to get me a better team, because these guys aren't good enough for me. I need better players. And to paraphrase Phil Jackson, he turns around and goes, well, your job is to bring them up to your level then. And that's the job as a leader, is how do you bring people with you? Because it's easy to go, they're not good enough, so, well, how do we support them? It's same with coaches, how do we support them to get them better? No, they may not get to your level, but you can actually improve them around it. So what does that look like? Well, it's around building really strong relationships. People aren't going to follow you if they don't trust you. So how do you show authentic care? Knowing that some you will move really quickly and some you will move very slowly, some you won't move at all. basic around it. But how do you actually have that as a bit of a goal each week? Okay, here's my own goals I want to tick off, but I might chip away at these 2 players this week. Around it. And it takes time, mate. And I'm saying everyone wants the easy answer to this, but it's hard because not everyone is playing football for the same reason you are. Around it. So just being curious and working out, okay, how do I bring them with me? Because if it's like if you in a team where you make a mistake and the senior players kind of frown back at you or just not shun you, but maybe don't talk, or what that feeling's like, you tend to go into your shell even more. Then you tend to make more mistakes, and then it just keeps going. So how do you create, the buzzword at the moment is that psychological safety? How do you create an environment where they feel safe to make a mistake, knowing that they can ask for help, compared to the old school environment where you sink or swim? So again, there's not a thing you can do. There's lots of things you can do, but it's also, as a leader, understand which bits can I not control, but I know I care about. So I care about the performance of the team and I care about how we play, but I can't control that. So I just need to be aware of my farm myself getting caught up in that. Because if you try and control that, you're going to try and do everything. Then you do nothing.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes complete sense. Based on standards, do you think that there's a real challenge with athletes specifically, or it could be in anything, right? It could be in business, it could be wherever, where you're consumed by this one arena of life, and then you tend to lack standards in other places of your life as well, where it's like, okay, all of a sudden, because I'm going all in this one thing and I commit myself to high performance, then there's something that I'm trying to figure out at the moment. It's like, you know what? In life, people don't have the same standards that I have. So then there's going to be decisions where I'm going to have sacrifices and make different decisions in places, just because, you know what? It could be separating. It's like, comes down to that cliche again. And as you said, they work because they're usually true, but you become the people that you surround yourself with, right? You become like that average. So it's like, okay, you know what? You have to set that standard for yourself in life and social circles and relationships and everything. And I think that's one thing that I haven't really been conscious of for a long time until this year, where it's not just sport that I have to surround myself with high performance individuals. It comes down to where you want to be in life. And do you think that there's a common factor in athletes specifically that they get so consumed by that?
Yeah, look, I think they can, but we do a lot of work, particularly in individual athletes, but team ones, is who's on your bus is a bit of an analogy. Who needs to be on the bus, what seats are on the bus, and who do you need to get off your bus? Because there's as mate, to be a high performance athlete, there's a lot of sacrifice and there's a lot of things that you can't do that maybe your mates are doing around it. So it is really, really clear on who you need around you, because when things aren't going well, we generally will go to a default behaviour or the easiest option. And if you've got mates who like to go out to the Terps every weekend and things aren't going well, the Kiwi attitude, well, that will fix it. And you go out with your mates and you feel worse the next day. So I think it is being clear on, almost that like-minded people, but also you can still have like-minded people around how they live their life, but different interests. So it doesn't have to be all footballers or all high performance athletes. It can be lots of things. But if you want to live a certain lifestyle and you're in a flat or an environment where everyone supports that lifestyle, it seems a lot easier, because it's tough. There's so many things that take us away from eating well and sleeping well and doing those little things well. So you want to give you opportunity for you to do that. So the people you surround yourself with, for me, it's crucial. And there's certainly some athletes who have done it really well and been around some not great people. But I think for sustainability, I think it's really important, because you want a lifestyle which is sustainable, not you do it for 6 weeks and then it gets too hard around it. So I think, like-minded people, it certainly makes the journey a bit more enjoyable and a bit more supportive, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and thanks for that. I want to kind of circle back to when you were talking about working with kids and just the pure enjoyment of sport and why we do things. I had a great chat with Jordan Toffler the other week, and he's representing Manu Samoa, and he was talking about how the difference is when we look at society and look at what success is, and we see sport as this money, fame kind of thing, and then he's like, when he gets to represent Manu Samoa and the people and the culture, it's like just that pride of actually wearing the jersey and understanding the backgrounds and the roots and and that it's almost like a pureness to it, right? And I think that's the same with kids and just enjoying the game to start off with. Then as all these pressures in life comes into play, when you try and make a career out of it, it can get so overwhelming and it can be
Yep.
a real shift. How do you get back to that? How do people who could be in that position, like I spoke to a guy the other week who loves his training, loves playing football, like enjoys the training side, but then he gets to game day and all of a sudden it's like there's a complete difference where it's like, this is a chore. I absolutely hate this because there's too much pressure, people watching, too much on the line. Like, how do we get back to that place of just pure enjoyment and just becoming that 7-year-old kid again?
We probably need some tasers at games of coaches and parents and start tasering them. Uh, we need to take control of the school sport because we lost control of school sport. We need to make schools for wanker parents who believe this stuff is really important and they can all go to one school. Look, a lot of the stuff we want to do, we won't be able to do, but the reality is, we've taken the game away from the kids, and I say we adults have, and there's enough research, there's enough books, there's enough anecdotal evidence, there's enough evidence to say we've stuffed it up for them because football's a good example. Football used to be a winter sport, now it's summer too, so they get them all year round, and then we had them in these academies, and I look at, when I was working at schools and we had 15, 16-year-olds who were at school who were playing clubs, and the clubs then wouldn't let them play for their school. Around it, but they're playing senior football at 15, 16. It's like, this is almost child abuse, and I know it's a very strong word, but some of our sports almost are. Gymnastics, swimming, rowing at times. But everyone knows there's big issues. The physios are saying there's massive issues. These kids are getting injured more and more. We're saying, from my point of view, I'm getting busy with kids who are just getting overwhelmed. Yet everyone agrees when we say we need to do something about it, but then no one's prepared to do anything about it. So it's a bit of a negative answer, I'm afraid, but we need to somehow give the game back to the kids. You go down to a football game or a netball game and it's got these signs saying, please be respectful, don't abuse referees. It's like, how have we got to that point? Why is that our message? We've got to tell people how to behave. So we've got some big issues in this space. Youth sport now is $1 billion industry across the world, and money's involved. They don't want to lose that. So we need to somehow educate parents, educate sports, schools, to go, look, kids just want to play. That's what they want to do. And for me, sport's about getting them to play as much as they can. There's schools out there who are just so infatuated with winning because, their principals are full of egos and their boards are, that they will compromise the fun factor, as you talked about, to win, and it's just killing the sport. So I'm probably not giving you an answer because there's so many layers to this, and I think we've lost a bit of control, and it really saddens me to have to deal with some of the things I deal with some of these athletes who hate their sport at 14 and 15, not because of the sport, because of parents, because of coaches, not their teammates. And it's quite a sad state of affairs we're up to. And so there needs to be some more movement in the space. And as you know, we usually wait till something really bad to happen, and they will make all these noises, and then nothing changes again. I found a little bit defeatist with this because it's something that there's a few of us, been harping on for probably 10 years, but I haven't seen a huge shift. There's certainly sports that are trying to do it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not criticising sports, and there's some who are trying to really educate parents and coaches and really push it, but we've had to make rules around how. There's a great example you probably saw in New Zealand. There's a rule. There's some football league in New Zealand where you've got to play 2 under 20 players in your team.
Yeah.
Did you see that? What happened?
Yeah, they play them for the first couple of minutes and then take them off.
Yeah, so first stoppage in play, they took them off. And so you're sitting there, I don't know what, it was reasonably high level of football, I'm assuming. That, for whatever reason, this coach, who's an adult, thought that was okay. It's kind of mind-blowing to think you'd put an under 20-year-old player through that. It was obviously a televised game, because cameras were there. That this coach thought that was okay. So you're kind of going, I don't know who the coach was, but he's probably a really rational, nice person. But this is the thinking that people are getting caught up in. And I think there's rules in rugby now. I think it's under 18s. Everyone has to play half the game. Well, why do you need a rule for that? Should that not be a given? But we've got to now make these rules to protect kids so they play. It's kind of like we've kind of lost a bit of control, and this is the case. So as I said, I'm probably not going to answer your question very well because I just don't think we've had the answer. There's been a lot of workshops, there's been Balance is Better workshops, and everyone sits there and, yep, great idea, and then they do the complete opposite. So I'm hoping at some stage your generation might kick back a wee bit around this and actually give the game back to the kids. And remember, it's a game. The All Blacks got a World Cup this year. They win it, no one really cares. Everyone goes, yeah, well played. If they lose it, everyone goes, well, we don't like Foster anyway, and we carry on. But we have this thing that, as you know, mate, when we win, everything will be different. It's not. It's not.
That's the reality. It actually reminds me, I had the opportunity to coach at Football Academy up in Wellington a couple of years ago, and one of the rules around the culture of the academy was there are no parents allowed at training, and it was one of the best things. And like, there's a big bank, and like, yeah, sure, like some of the parents who can come to pick up their kids go watch from the top, but nowhere near the pitch, nowhere near around, because like as soon as they get in the car, they're going to get questions, how's training, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is that when you're getting told one thing by coaches and trying to understand this one philosophy of how to play and just the enjoyment factor, it's so good just to have that one voice, because then you're just learning and you're just surrounded in that environment. Then they can separate that, right? So that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about it, because you just see the kids just fully engaged, fully there, fully present, giving it everything, just loving the game. Then all of a sudden go home, enjoy that part afterwards.
Yeah, the ironic thing is after COVID in New Zealand, school sports started, but there was no spectators. And I was working at a school then part-time, and it was interesting, the referees and the players loved it because there was no spectators. No parents were watching. Referees weren't being abused. The kids just could go out there and play without worrying about what could be said afterwards because the parents didn't see the game. And it was fascinating because, the school I worked at, I had parents whose kids were at other schools who were ringing me saying, "How can you sneak me in this weekend? Can you get me in there? Because I've got to watch my kid play." I'm going, "What are you talking about?" They're going, "I've got to watch them play. It's a big game." I'm going, well, I won't say what I said to them, but it wasn't that polite in the sense of, what do you think? Let the kids play. But these are, again, really rational people who are going, "I've got to go and watch them. Can we get a ladder and put it behind the fence? What can we do?" I'm just going, "Oh my, we've lost control of this." But this is that complete buy into these kids' lives and then wanting to watch them. It's like, parents want to watch 100%, but to that level, the kids just want to play. And the probably biggest thing I get from young ones is that car ride. As you said, they had the car ride to the game and had the car ride coming back from the game because they're over it. Once the game's finished, win or lose, they're kind of, as long as they got their orange at half time and probably a couple of lollies afterwards, they're pretty happy to kick on. But next week the parents will then talk about the game. The kids just... And again, the worst thing is, I suppose, when you meet these parents, they're lovely, rational, often educated, cool parents, but they seem to just go crazy with sport because they think their kid's the next All White or All Black or whatever it's going to be. And yeah, they're not going to be. So it's certainly one we can do better at, and I think around the world we can. I think there's an issue across the whole world in this space. It's not just New Zealand.
Yeah, no, it's powerful for sure. There's just one thing to finish off with. One of the favorite quotes I heard when you were talking to Rachel a couple of years ago on the Happy Athlete podcast. She said that if you're nothing without the medal, then you'll be nothing with it, which I thought was so powerful, and it's something just for everyone to kind of understand, and that can be interpreted to anything, right? Business, relationships, every kind of arena. Can you just go into a bit more detail about like why that's just so important to understand our value compared to this end goal?
Yep. Look, and again, it's something I learned the hard way, and as I said, probably earlier, went through the tactics because I learned I'm not winning here, so I've got to find other meaning around it. And I suppose it's something I've then already do, rightly or wrong with the athletes I work with. I do a lot of pushing around this space. Often I say if you're a wanker beforehand, you'll still be the wanker afterwards. No one, the medal won't make you. No one cares. So I remember, an athlete years ago I worked with, and they'd done really well with some decent medals, and we went into their house for dinner, and so he kind of was thanking the team and had his medals out to show everyone. So, I mean, his coach stole them and hid them. And, halfway through the night, he goes, "Oh, where are they?" I was just going, "I don't know." And he didn't worry about it, but later on, he's starting to go, "Where are they?" Because we're ready to go. And we're going, "I don't know." And he goes, "Where are they?" And I said, "Well, why do you care about it?" He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, all that medal shows is one day and one moment you did something quite good. That's it. It doesn't represent who you are as a person. It doesn't represent you as a person. It just means that one moment you happen to do something quite good ahead of someone else." And you could see the penny drop then, around it. And it was like, "Mate, I want you to aspire to be the best you can be. And if that means you end up with a bit of metal, it's just a bit of metal, mate. But I don't want you to define yourself by that, and I don't want you to chase that, because that's your rainbows and unicorns, because you get it and you go, yay, and then we come down. I want you to be inspired by getting better every day. I want you to be inspired by making a difference to other people every day, doing all the good stuff, because it's the human being stuff, because that's the sustainable stuff. And that stuff, you can get self-worth and self-satisfaction doing those things. And if you happen to win a medal, that's great, but you do just as much satisfaction as, a bit cliche, but the journey of getting better and growth and meeting people and, making a difference in people's lives, leaving that legacy piece, all that cliche stuff. But that stuff is what really we hold on to, and it's the same thing. What do you want someone to say to you, for you, for your 30th birthday? "Oh, Ben had a great left foot, great for corners, really good in the air, strong in the tackle." Well, no, you want people to say who you are as a person. And the qualities you are as a person, and that's a bit. Again, I'm not saying I'm right with this, but it's something I'm a really strong believer in, and it's something any athlete I work with, that's what they get from me a lot, is that real push. Because I think if you can be the best version of yourself here, the performances will come. Now, what comes from those performances, that's the uncertain piece. But that's the bit I want you to define yourself by, not by medals. Because you go back to Michael Phelps, I think he's the most decorated Olympian ever, phenomenal. Through his mental health issues, those medals meant nothing, It gave him nothing in life satisfaction, life self-worth around it. So for me, it's, as I said, chase excellence 100%, chase your goals 100%, but if your goals are medals and teams, I just don't, from my experience working with athletes, it's not sustainable.
That's a brilliant way to finish up here. So, Quinny, thank you so much for your time, mate. That's so powerful, and I think there's going to be so much value that people take away from that, and working in the space that you are in. It's powerful and so helpful to so many, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, look, thanks for your time, mate, and thanks for doing this. I mean, at the end of the day, is that you're, again, giving back now too by doing this. So thank you for doing this, and good luck with your next venture.
Absolute pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.